Hi, and welcome to a brief overview of the Iconik Adobe Panel in Premiere Pro and how it can help to streamline your editorial workflows. With the Iconik Adobe Panel, editors can quickly access and manage the media assets and project files they need, regardless of their location. So whatever high-resolution media they're working with, whether that's stored remotely or locally, Iconik makes it easy to move those assets and projects between workstations so editorial workflows can really happen from anywhere. So in this video, we'll explore how to set up the Adobe panel, we'll look at how to work with proxies, and we'll look at how to use Iconik's collaboration tools for review and versioning. Finally, we'll demonstrate a high-resolution online export to complete the process. Overall, we'll just show how the entire remote editing lifecycle becomes that much more efficient with Iconik at the center. So let's get going. Here's our blank Premiere Pro project ready for us to build our edit. In the example for this video, we're going to pretend we're part of the team at the Iconik skateboard company and we want to create a new commercial to showcase our skateboard gear. First, we need to add the assets we want to use for this commercial, which we'll do directly from the Iconik Adobe panel. If you don't have the panel installed at this stage, you can find instructions on this page on Iconik's knowledge base. Just search for panel installation. Once the panel is installed, go to the Windows tab in Premiere Pro, select Extensions, and choose Iconik. You'll be prompted to sign in to your Iconik instance so the panel can authenticate. In this instance, we're already logged in, so the authentication has been approved. If you aren't logged in, you'll have to do so at this stage. And here we are in the Iconik Adobe panel. This is essentially a streamlined version of the Iconik web interface that can be embedded into various Creative Cloud applications. Via the panel, you can search, play back videos, review comments and more, making it easy to find and use the content you need without leaving your editing workspace. In the panel, we can see all the assets stored in our Iconik domain. The originals of these assets all reside in different locations, either on the cloud or on-premise. What we're seeing here are Iconik's indexed proxies. They're much easier to work with. We can quickly scrub through thumbnails to see what's in our assets and choose what we want to work with without needing to upload massive amounts of data. It's like having a window onto all of our storage, which makes it faster for editors to find what they want to work with. With that said, let's locate the content we want to use in our skateboard commercial using the panel's search page and import it into our Premiere Pro project. Right-clicking an asset presents the option to import the original or proxy version depending on what we want to work with. We can also open entire collections, which are the virtual folders that help organize your assets in Iconik. Let's have a look at our collections. To do so, we just click here. And for this project, we've already prepared a collection called Skateboard Company Commercial, which contains all the assets we want to use for the project. To open this collection in our Premiere projects, we can right-click the collection and highlight Open All Collection Content. In this example, we want to work with proxies for a lighter editorial workflow, so we'll select Proxies. This dialog confirms that we're about to add 13 asset proxies to our Premiere Projects download queue. Let's hit Continue. In the Transfers tab in the panel, we can see the proxies from the Skateboard Company Commercial collection importing into Premiere and referencing the files in our Iconik domain. Now, in the Premiere Project panel, we can see the imported Iconik assets in our bins marked with low res to indicate we're working with proxies. Let's add some of these files to our timeline to create our sequence. We'll rename the sequence Skateboard Company Commercial. And just like that, we've quickly pulled in proxy files from Iconik, which are indexed from the originals from wherever they're stored, and we've got a rough sequence ready for editing. Easy. Now before moving on, let's make sure we save this project so no work gets lost. As I mentioned earlier, doing this in Iconik is a powerful option when you want everyone on your team, even remote editors, to access and collaborate on the project without needing those files stored on their desktop. So let's navigate to the Project tab in the Iconik panel. If you want to save the project at the root level of your Iconik domain, you can simply click Upload to Iconik, but for this project we want to save it into a specific collection, so let's set that up. We'll head back to the Search tab and open the collection tree. Here, in our skateboard commercial collection, we'll create a collection called Premiere Project Files, ready for us to save the project. To upload the Premiere Pro project to this collection, let's click the gear icon and select Upload Project into Collection. You'll see Iconik working through the upload process. And once that's done, if we hit refresh, we can see the Premiere project file is now saved in Iconik. And back in the Project tab, we can also see this message letting us know that the project is saved in Iconik. This means anyone can access the project and the assets it's used if they need to work on it further. Now that our short sequence is finished, we could export it to our desktop, but in this case our editor wants to export the rendered sequence directly into Iconik for review. So let's do that. First, let's create a collection where we want to save our Premiere exports. Let's just call it Exports. To upload the rendered sequence into this collection, let's click the gear icon again and select Upload Current Sequence into Collection. In the dialog window that appears, we can choose the render preset we want to use for this sequence export. Here you'll see a drop-down menu with all the available presets. These are pulled directly from the default Adobe Media Encoder presets, but if you have custom render presets, they'll also appear here. For this export, let's choose H.264. Below, you can choose to encode the entire sequence or just the parts between any in and out points you've set. For this example, we'll go ahead and encode the entire sequence. Let's hit Upload, which will launch Media Encoder to begin the process. Once Media Encoder completes the rendering, Iconik will transcode the sequence into the cloud. Let's go back to our exports collection and refresh. You can see that Iconik is generating a web proxy for the sequence just like any other proxy in Iconik. Let's wait for the transcode to complete. Okay, the transcode is completed, so let's refresh. And there it is! Our first version of the Skateboard Company commercial is now in Iconik, ready to be managed, collaborated on, and reviewed. Now, let's have a look at the review workflows in Iconik and how comments can show as markers on the Premiere Pro timeline. We'll also take a quick look at versioning workflows. But, before we continue, a quick note. The next section of this video shows the old media player that was available in Iconik at the time of recording. The new media player, which you'll see in review sessions today, looks like this. So if things look a bit different in your Iconik domain, don't worry. The features and workflows we discuss here remain the same. Alright, let's jump back in. First, let's request approval on this asset in the Iconik web interface. We can request approval and add anyone from whom we need feedback. They can be internal users within our Iconik domain or external collaborators. Now, let's imagine someone who received the export thinks this edit needs more work. They can reject the asset, indicating changes are needed, and add comments to explain the adjustments they want. You can add comments directly to a rendered sequence and have them show up in your timeline. In this example, we're going to add them to our source clips. Let's make a comment on this asset by using I to set an in point and O to set an out point. In the comments, we can @tag the editor and leave a note such as, "This is a bit too long, please cut down this section." Let's go to another asset. And we'll add another comment here requesting a logo to be added to the end of the edit. Now, let's return to our Premiere Pro project and take a look at the sequence. Currently, there are no comments in the timeline, and when we check the markers panel, we can see there are no markers added. Let's update that. To do so, we need to select the relevant clips. Then back in the Project tab, click the gear icon and select Update Markers for selected bin items. Now you can see that the comments have been imported into Premiere as markers. If we open a clip in the source panel, you can see that the comments now act as in and out points, giving the editor a rough idea of what changes are needed. This saves time and highlights the major points that must be addressed for the next edit. So let's make those changes. After addressing the comments, we can mark them as done on the Iconik asset to indicate that the changes have been made. Now, let's upload the new version of our project with the edits made. We just need to go to the Search tab in Iconik, click the gear icon, and select Upload and Current Sequence. This dialog box will appear, asking whether we want to upload this as a new version of the current project or as a standalone asset. Since we want our team to see the sequence as a new version, we'll keep the new version option selected. We can also choose to copy comments from the previous version, but in this case we want a clean slate, so we'll leave that option unchecked. Let's hit upload. Here, Premiere is warning us that a file with the same name already exists. But since we know we want to overwrite it with a new version, we'll go ahead and confirm the upload. Media Encoder is now running the transcoding process. And if we head to the Transfers tab in the Iconik panel, we can see that everything is uploading. And it's complete. So now, if we go back to our exports collection in Iconik, we'll find a new version 2 of the asset. The proxy is transcoding, so let's let the process finish. Now that the transcode is done, we can see at the top that the new version of the asset is ready and we can view all of the recent edits. There's our logo. And again, we might want to back up the new version of our project file. So let's go back to the Adobe Panel Search tab, hit the gear icon, and select Upload and Project. Again, the dialog will ask if we want to upload this as a new asset or a new version. If needed, we can also choose to bring comments from the previous version. Let's keep things as they are and hit Upload. And if we head to our Premiere Project Files collection, we can see a new version 2 of the project is saved. Now just before we go on, let's consider a scenario where new files were added to the sequence, but they were added locally, meaning Iconik doesn't know about them. This can cause problems when somebody else remotely tries to access the project and finds some media files are offline because they aren't available in Iconik. Fortunately, there's a way to fix this. To show this in action, let's add an image from my desktop to the Premiere project. Now, if we head to the project page in the Iconik panel, hit refresh, and scroll down, we can see that Iconik has recognised the new image file, but the checkboxes here show that it's not saved in Iconik, and there's no proxy attached to it. That means if anyone else accesses this project via Iconik, they might find they have an offline asset. Let's fix this so anyone working on the project can access the same file. But just before I show you that, let me demonstrate a safeguard in place to prevent problems. Let's try uploading the project to Iconik in its current state. As you can see, the panel warns that the project contains media that is not currently available in Iconik. This is for editors who might be working fast and dropping in files that are not coming from Iconik, so we're letting them know that if someone else were to open the project, they wouldn't be able to relink those files. And as you can see, we can rectify this by uploading all non-Iconik media into Iconik as assets on upload. But right now, we're going to address this a different way. So let's press cancel, and let's click the gear icon in project files and select upload all non-Iconik project items. We're given the option to upload these files into one of our recently used collections, or we can navigate to a different collection. In this case, let's add the new asset to our skateboard company commercial collection. Once the upload is complete, we can refresh, and you'll see that the asset is now stored in Iconik. So now, when we click upload to Iconik, we're back to the usual dialog without any warnings. Everything is where it should be, so anyone working on the project can access all the files without any issues. Now, let's say this project gets final approval in Iconik, and version 2 is set to approved. We might want to upload a high resolution version of this edit to ensure we have the best quality available for distribution. We have a few ways to do this. In Premiere Pro, we'll use the Projects tab to reconnect our high-resolution original assets to the proxies we used in the project. As you can see in the project files, all the assets are noted as being stored in Iconik, but they're also marked as proxies, which we don't want for our final export. To fix this, we'll click the gear icon in the Project Files tab. Here you can see the option to reconnect original files to all proxies. In selecting this, all the files in your Premiere project will reconnect to their original high-res versions. However, in this example we didn't use every asset in the timeline, so we only want to reconnect the originals for the assets we actually used in the sequence. To do that, we can click the three-dot icon and choose Reconnect Originals to Sequence Proxies. Now, only the high-res versions of the files used in our sequence will be reconnected. In the project panel, you'll notice that the files used in the sequence no longer have low res in their file names, indicating that Iconik is connecting the originals to these files in the sequence. Files not used in the sequence still showed low res because Iconik hasn't reconnected those as we requested. Now, let's export our final sequence with all of the high res assets. We'll head back to the Search tab, navigate to our Exports collection, click the gear menu, and select Upload Current Sequence into Collection. Again, this dialog will ask if we want this to be a new version or a standalone asset. Let's choose to upload it as a new version and hit Upload. And again, since we're uploading to the cloud, we don't need to worry about overwriting local files. Let's confirm by selecting Yes in the dialog. And once again, Media Encoder is transcoding the file for us to our requested specs. Now, if we refresh our exports folder, we can see the high resolution export saved as a version 3 of the sequence ready for distribution. Now something else really cool in Iconik is that it makes it really easy to see which assets were used in your Premiere exports and projects. Let's head to a recent export of our project in Iconik to see this in action. Here we can select Relations. This opens a tab displaying a list of the specific Iconik assets used in the sequence, with those relationships built automatically through the panel. So, if for some reason you didn't have access to the Premiere Pro project file itself, you could still see and access all of the assets used in the sequence. You'll also see the collections where the sequence exists, and the product of relation which links back to the Premiere Pro project the sequence came from. If we click through to the Premiere Pro project, we can also use the Relations panel to see all the different sequences exported from this project and the assets used in it. So whenever you find a Premiere Pro project file in your Iconik domain, you can use this feature to trace all of the assets used in that project. Additionally, when viewing the relations of an individual asset, you can use the tab to see which other projects it has been used in. This could be useful if, for example, you wanted to track how frequently certain clips are being used across your organization's projects. Now, let's take a quick look at the panel preferences to see some of the ways you can configure things. From the Preferences section, we can adjust a few important settings. First, there's the Working Directory. This is where any downloads from Premiere, such as proxy files or master original files you don't have locally, will be saved. By default, it's set to documents/Iconik, but you can choose any directory that works best for you. In the middle, you can see we've selected to work with a proxy workflow. The import scale is set to frame size, as in this example we're not working with multiple sequence sizes, and we're leaving the option to check for matching XMPs on file download enabled. Turning this off would make it harder for Iconik to track files that come directly from Iconik in our project. Another area to highlight is storage mappings. Storage mappings allow us to set up Iconik Storage Gateway managed storage devices. The Iconik Storage Gateway, also known as the ISG, is the solution that lets Iconik index on-premise and locally hosted assets. For instance, I've mapped an ISG here that indexes files stored on my work laptop. By mapping an ISG managed device, you can connect to high-resolution or original files in your Premiere Pro project without downloading them first. The panel manages the connection, saving you that bandwidth and time. If you have multiple storage locations you'd like to connect, then you can map them here as well. And that's a high-level overview of the Iconik Adobe Panel working in Premiere Pro. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out, we're here to answer them.